So it seems like companies in the West decided that webcomics exist. There's an Archie comic on Webtoon now, Big Ethel Energy. I read it. Let's take a look. Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. Now when people think about comics, at least here in North America, there's a tendency to jump straight to superheroes. However, there are a lot of other genres and other forms. Many of them tend to slip under the radar. Archie can be one of those. Archie comics were for a long time a staple. You could find them in checkout lines long after floppies vacated. You could still beg your parents for either candy or Archie. In my case, I'd usually get Archie and not the candy. I could usually finagle a double digest as well. Either a Betty and Veronica or one of those really rare and precious Jughead ones. Archie comics are one of those things that feel like they're incredibly well known, but are also still very niche. Archie comics characters were created all the way back in 1941 and first appeared in Pep Comics number 22. They were made to appeal to fans of Mickey Rooney and that ilk, the teens running around of that era. Mickey Rooney was heartthrob central back in the day. The premise of Archie is simple: a group of teens growing up in Riverdale and their adventures and heartbreaks and hijinks. It's a concept so simple it's able to move very easily through time, though it also has a nostalgic edge. And modern renditions of Riverdale have a kind of retro chic vibe. It also can transfer genres very well because of this, and they do. The Archie comics are willing to play in pretty much any arena and give anything a go. The company had a whole supernatural line going for a while. They actually do that periodically, so their deal with Webtoon is hardly surprising. The comic as mentioned is called Big Ethel Energy. It's centered around the character of Ethel Muggs and giving her own story and, well, some sympathy, focusing on what it means to be the odd girl out, specifically in high school. But now she's back and she's gonna prove how far she's come and see just how things have changed, and also see if everything was as it seemed. Ethel first appeared in Archie's pal Jughead in 1962, and for a time she did have the nickname Big Ethel, although that was phased out in the 80s, but has been repurposed for this series. We're reclaiming Big Ethel apparently. Also, her name was first Ethel Dinkelhoff. She was introduced and portrayed as plain and completely head over heels for Jughead, and for her first few decades that was kinda it. She was the butt of some pretty cruel jokes. The one that came up the most often was, "Ew, she's ugly, leave Jughead alone." Over time this would ease up and she'd become drawn more regularly and she'd start to have a character. She'd become more refined and she'd settle into being her own distinct character that wasn't a caricature. But those early depictions leave an impression. And if you collected Archie at random, they would reprint those older stories, so it wasn't uncommon to encounter some of them. So Ethel is a character who can stand for and has received some TLC, both in main Archie comics and in adaptations, though the verdict is out on Riverdale. Oh my, is it ever doing its own thing.
You've actually been talking to the Gargoyle King in person.
Yes, we've become very close.
This webtoon is written by Carol Brown Ahmed with art by Siobhan, who has her name pronunciation on her Instagram. Helpful, especially for a person whose viewers joke that she can't even say her own name. The artist has a line in her write-up that's gonna come up, so I'm gonna read it. One time an art director told her stop making the characters so hot, and she didn't listen. Are you ready for the write-up? Well, you better be, because I'm gonna read it to you. She used to be the laughingstock of Riverdale. Now she's a successful New York journalist with a don't give a f attitude. After graduating from Riverdale High, Ethel couldn't get away from her hometown and onto her chosen career path fast enough. When the mayor of Riverdale pays her handsomely to write a history of the city, she can't wait to return to take down Archie, Jughead, Betty, Veronica, and all the other Riverdale natives who made her life hell all those years ago. Although, I mean, that's not accurate, but we're getting there. The only thing she forgets to consider is maybe they've all changed too. Now, while the description isn't entirely accurate in the attitude that Ethel has, because she definitely does not go back at the start with the intent to take them all down, it is true to the tone and genre that you're going to get. This is very romantic tropey, slice of lifey, realistic Ed's revenge kind of fantasy, like, ooh, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna be doing better. They're gonna look at me and be like, wow, look how well she's doing. Take that. It's also overselling the whole super successful journalist thing. Fictional journalists can be pretty tropey in how they're portrayed. They're right up there with fictional psychiatrists, but most professions suffer from that when they're portrayed in media. Would you want it any other way? Let me know, I'm seriously asking. Now this webtoon launched on September 21st of 2021 with 3 chapters out the gate and 5 behind the coins. Ooh la la, Archie. So at the time of this recording, it's October 8th, 2021. I wanted to wait and see Jughead arrive and then see a week after that too, because there were some concerns about things surrounding Jughead swirling around him, and of course we're gonna talk about it. We always talk about things on this channel. Stuff and things, Lori. Also, I didn't feel like buying any more coins and I'd used mine on the Wayne family adventures, so there's that too. But I am a patient beast. I'm Sasha. Let's look at this comic. Like, subscribe, big subscribe energy. We open on a flashback to an incident that haunts Ethel. She's getting ready for a double date. Her and Jughead and Archie and Veronica. Ethel Ethel's high school experience is presented as a series of awkward moments wherein she just doesn't fit in, be it in that she cares more for her schoolwork or that she just can't get in with that cool group. Especially this crush on Jughead is something that haunts her because she went hard. Desperate things like baking a series of cupcakes asking him to a dance. As someone who once baked a boy she liked a cake in high school, I can relate to this, and I hate that. Get out of my head, Big Ethel Energy. That was a deep cut. Flashback Ethel got tickets for herself, Jughead, Archie, and Veronica, assuming they were going on this double date, not realizing they just wanted the tickets for themselves. Humiliated, she just tells them to have a good time and flees. This experience is the launch point for us moving into the modern era, 10 years later. Now she lives in New York. She's left Riverdale Ethel behind, but not without some scars. They're deep. Such as, she hasn't dated. She can't get over Jughead. Burger appeal too strong. She really hasn't moved on from high school and that she's still trying to define herself in opposition to it. Ethel Muggs, Columbia alum, Brooklyn dweller, no longer a small town girl. Riverdale who? Ethel has a friend named Tim. Time of recording, he is a sassy gay best friend stereotype. He also has a scar going through his eyebrow, making us Scarbros. Step off my look, Tim. I'm a big fan. You profiled AOC, loved that story. What was she like in real life? This is how journalism is like, right? Being mobbed by fans about works you care the most about. Now, Ethel has been getting calls from Riverdale. They want her to come back and write a book about the history of the town. She's been avoiding it because contrary to what the synopsis said, she doesn't want to go back to Riverdale. She wants nothing to do with anything that happened there. I like it here, even if I do live in a 5-story apartment with no elevator. I work at a journal called At Large. I'm happy to say I'm a valuable contributor. We used to publish physical editions monthly, now it's once a quarter. But the website is booming. I only share my cubicle with 3 other people. Ethel wants to write the hard-hitting pieces, but her article on the Syrian refugees didn't get a lot of clicks, so they want to write something else. Can she write 10 ways to get him to open up to you? This magazine sounds confused. She may soon be sharing her cubicle with more people. Ethel has still not really moved past the things that happened in Riverdale, but she learns that she's being evicted, and she's got a letter from her teacher, Miss Grundy, the one teacher who believed in her and saw her potential and pushed her by giving her a C, even though she deserved an A, because she knew that she could do better. Your miles will vary. Miss Grundy is sick. Very sick. Because of course she is. I need to spend time with my loved ones when I can sick. So Ethel now has all the motivators to go back to Riverdale. She's not gonna have a place to live, and the person that she cares about there is sick. Teaching you was the highlight of my career. Asked in the chat for the other Riverdale students. Miss Grundy may be the only good memory I have of Riverdale. Ignore that, because that's a lie. We see that she was friends with Betty and remembers Betty fondly. Is Ethel an unreliable narrator? Is this about to get really deep? Don't trust Ethel! I was that student who was friends with her teacher. I owe everything to her. This elevatorless apartment I'm getting evicted from, those articles I don't want to write. Thanks, Miss Grundy. Ignore my salt. It's a sweet and heartfelt moment. I just have shards of ice in my heart. I'd say you could crash with me, but I've got company, if you know what I mean. Everybody knows what you mean, Tim. Tim convinces her she should take the book deal, and then she'll have a book to her name. So she manages to negotiate a really sweet deal, including them covering her expenses, and she ends up going back, and she's gonna be living with Betty. But uh-oh, in the upstairs apartment, it's Archie and Jughead. Archie Andrews was nice to me when none of his friends were around. So were they bullies? What about Betty? Wait, Ethel Muggs, you look so different. I mean, does she though? I may have thought for a second that a model was moving into our building. You really do look amazing. Archie, stop. Wow, Ethel won a journalism award, further validating how awards don't do that much for you. Ethel finds this whole thing very awkward and she's struggling not to lash out because she can tell that Archie doesn't mean to be rude, but at the same time, he's really bothering her. And then he invites them up for drinks later, and that means she has to see Jughead. Juggy. Archie, Betty, and Jughead. They really had the special sauce. The Szechuan sauce. I remember when this picture was taken, how much I wanted to be in it. So Ethel dolls herself all up to go and meet Jughead. He's not here, but we get some backstory. Him and Archie have the penthouse suite because Jughead made an app that does something, we don't know yet, but he sold it for a lot of money. Also, he has a YouTube channel where he cooks and eats food. Jughead is a mukbang YouTuber. I'd watch that. Live action adaptation, please. So they're hanging out, Jughead is out getting food, and then he appears. And I posted the picture of his appearance in the community tab because it's something. Jughead Jones. I guess I used to have a crush on him. I don't want to talk about it. Hey, Jug! Long time no see. However, Jughead is weird and cold and flees to his room. You knew he was going to be just as awful as high school. You were right. Okay, let's pause for a minute and talk about Jughead, because some people had some concerns. Mostly surrounding how he was going to be depicted. And no, not just where is his crown or GTFO. Some were wondering, was Jughead going to be depicted as asexual, as some feel he is meant to be? And yes, this is something people asked about or had strong concerns about even before anything was released. Jughead debuted in P.O Comics number 22 in 1941 with the rest of the main gang. And one of his defining traits is his love of food and his aversion to women, and for a time, specifically Ethel. This was taken and interpreted by many fans to be an implication that Jughead was asexual, aromantic, or both. This after there was a period where he was believed to be deeply misogynistic, and another period where people believed that he was in love with Archie. There have been many phases to Jughead. Now, this asexual lore grew to the point where many believe it to be fact, as in certain canons it has been presented as such, chief among them being Chip Zdarsky's bits from the new Riverdale verse confirmed in 2016. The thing with Archie is that it doesn't have a centralized canon, not really-ish. It's very loose. It's more a series of canons, with the reboot one being one of them, which is how you can have things like the supernatural verse, the superhero verse, the long-running digest verse. So while that is one loved version of Jughead, it is not the only one. And while some may argue it's the most recent, it also exists alongside other depictions recent at the time of this recording that are doing their own different things. There are lots of different ways that Jughead has been interpreted. For example, in the digest verse, Jughead has historically shown interest in women, specifically Betty, saying if there was one woman he would kiss, it would be her. In Life with Archie, the married life, Archie marries Veronica from 2010, ends with Jughead marrying Ethel. In the Archie marries Betty one, you saw marrying Midge. 1988 had the explanation that Jughead had sworn off girls because of a deep heartbreak. In the 90s, for brief periods, Jughead had a series of girlfriends. One of them was January McAndrews, and she was an Archie descendant. This is from the series Jughead's Time Police, a short-lived series that actually got a reboot in 2019. This was one of those details that fell into the maybe he loves Archie camp. There was also Trula Twist. Anyone remember her? She was this femme fatale who tried to get Jughead interested in girls. It didn't work. I just wanted to talk about Trula. All of this is to say that there are multiple interpretations, and all have their own roots, so one is not more valid than the other, even if some may be more popular to certain fans. With a canon this long, you can find roots for whichever, and depending upon when you jump into it or your own subject positioning, you may identify more with one than another. There have been worries of ace erasure or exploitation, which one may feel if they accept or wish the 2015 canon to be the one true canon. Now, the author, who is a big Archie fan, has made posts indicating that she is aware of the concerns, such as the fact that she read a book on asexuality. Now, as this is coming out week to week and Webtoon sends goons to your house if you post behind the cut, one must wait and see how it develops, which is a necessity with any story. Creators also need room to tell their story and have build-up or suspense or twists, as well as take on different interpretations without fear. Some feel all Jugheads should be an option, whichever the creators feel suits the story they are trying to tell, which could already be the ace version. Now, some may feel that an ace/arrow or ace and arrow version has more weight or more evidence, or that it deserves to be the interpretation as is less represented, and that there are more stories to be told, hence it's more important to put that version forward, and that this is the true and that one should not go to any of the other interpretations. And some feel that even if there are multiple canons, if the ace version is not the one that is chosen, it is still erasure because there are so few stories centering around that, and that one would have seen that canon and decided against it. Others argue that he could still be asexual, aromantic, or both and still have a relationship. There are many different ways to look at it, and some are very attached to that version of Jughead and excited about it and so worry that they won't see it again. Some are also able to hold multiple interpretations in their heads side by side simultaneously and enjoy them both even if they can conflict with each other. For example, loving asexual Jughead but also Bughead. Now, this has been a topic of discussion for some time. Cole Sprouse, who plays Jughead on Riverdale, also had to address it when it was clear the series was going to do the Bughead route.
I personally would love to see that exploration, but I'm just the actor. At the end of the day, to say that that's my job or my duty is probably a misunderstanding of the writer's role and the director's role and the producer's role. Like, if I was in full creative charge of this character, it would, things obviously would be different. Things obviously would go a certain way, but it seems to me that they're not going to explore that angle. And I think to me, that's kind of unfortunate, to be quite honest. I think there's a lot of room for growth in that, and I think that kind of representation is quite interesting, and I think it's needed, frankly. But this is also one of those things where it's only really been canon in a single iteration of the Archie universe, and that's Zdarsky's universe. It was said very shortly in passing, and it really wasn't addressed with kind of the fullness that I think it should have been addressed with. And unfortunately, it has garnered, unfortunately for the other representations of Jughead, it has garnered much of the attention on his character. So it's not in the digest, it's not in any of the previous ones, and now it's become kind of the linchpin of his character, which I also don't know if that's right specifically. But I don't have that kind of control as an actor.
What version of Jughead do you prefer to see? And if it's the future, do you like whatever route the series took? Because you could do some interesting Ace or Arrow and Ace stories. Or also go the romantic trope route. It's pretty open. Speaking of tropes, the last chapter available before the coin cut time of recording sees Ethel visiting the ill Miss Grundy. And she has to really struggle with how ill she is, even though her former teacher is very optimistic. Optimistic in the face of the fact that there is no cure for what she has. Ethel really wants to know why she wanted her to write the town's history. I was so depressed when I lived here, and my parents moved away years ago. Why me? Exactly. With you as the writer, it'll be impartial. I'm worried that Miss Grundy doesn't know what impartial means. If Ethel hated living there, which she stated multiple times, she's likely to give a biased skew towards the negative presentation of the town, unless she discovers things and unveils them as she goes along. Things weren't as they seemed. A really impartial person would just be a stranger. Maybe Miss Grundy wants to smear the town. Although I don't see why. It's not like they depicted her like they did in Riverdale.
I thought the one thing that we could keep our Riverdale safe from was child predators.
Miss Grundy's not a predator. She's a good person.
Archie, you don't have to defend me.
No, he doesn't.
She didn't force me to do anything. I went after her. Everything that happened, I wanted to happen.
So Ethel interviews her, and then she goes to interview Principal Weatherby. I wish I could just move on from this place. Why does it have such power over me? I guess we never really forget high school. Mileage varies. She finds her locker, which sets off another memory of her wanting to go to homecoming with Jughead that looks like it's headed for sheer embarrassment. So that's Big Ethel Energy as it stands, time of recording, and not exposing behind the coin cut. Please don't hurt me, Webtoon. So how one receives this is going to depend upon a variety of factors. Let's go through some. Which Archie canon are you attached to, and how recent is it? Some are not gonna like how the gang are depicted. That less favorable view, kind of as bullies, it's not gonna land for everybody. While some will feel that it's more accurate or nuanced because they're being portrayed differently in the different scenes. And some will also say that this is from Ethel's perspective, so this is kind of her view on what it was like. It may not be entirely accurate. Despite what Miss Grundy said, Ethel has some biases. Another factor will be how was your high school experience and how attached to it were you? Some will find genuineness in the depiction of the odd girl out, or of having had some embarrassing moments and finding yourself trapped in them, unable to move on or wondering if you'll ever get closure, even if you feel like you shouldn't be worrying about them anymore. Others will feel that it's not showing enough damage, or that it's overstating the amount and overstating high school's importance. How Ethel looks is another complaint I've seen. That too hot comment has appeared in regard to Ethel. Some wish that she were plainer and feel that it would add more depth to the story if she were, or at the very least they want more of a distinguishment between past Ethel and modern Ethel. Others felt that she should be taller, that was a big part of the Big in Ethel, that she was tall. Now some have absolutely fallen in love with this and are really enjoying it and along for the ride. They just want to protect Ethel and want the best for her and don't want her to date anybody in Riverdale. While others find the work of her tropey, predictable, and saccharine. Big Ethel Energy certainly has me coming back week to week. I'm very invested in all the alternate universes of Archie that are out there, the Archieverse. I will read any and all Archie canons. Also more Webtoons, please. This has some flaws and does seem to love itself some cliches, but I'm curious as to where it's going, and some of the little details have me smiling. Mukbang Jughead. But I want to hear what you think. Are you enjoying this and does it seem up your alley? Why or why not? Are you a fan of the art style? Are you a fan of the characterization? Give Jughead his crown? Would you watch his YouTube channel? Tell me all your thoughts down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking this time today to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.